we as a society have to give men the space to be vulnerable, to be emotional, to express themselves. Because, to be honest, men aren't really given that leeway the same way that women are. And they're really taught, even from a young age, we're taught to suppress our emotions, we're taught to suppress our feelings. So that's why men aren't as open about things like this as women are, because we've been groomed since we've been a kid. I mean, how many little boys have heard, suck it up? Or how many men have heard, man up?
Welcome to This Beautiful Struggle.
I'm excited about it.
We finally have gotten to a point where we're just ready to share unfiltered our lives. Infertility is tough. Adoption is tough. But then even talking about like me losing my dad, you losing your mom within a couple of years of each other, our kids losing grandparents, your career and my career, and then making the ultimate decision to move to Nevada and what that looks like, moving away from all of your friends and family and all of those things.
Hopefully people can resonate with our story and just letting people know that they're not alone.
It's not the norm, and infertility is something that people don't ever want to talk about. Our family is such a hot mess, Express. I mean, this is just what it is, right? Like, so we don't have to front anymore.
It's been a long time coming.
Welcome back to This Beautiful Struggle. I'm Erin.
And I'm Casey.
Today we're going to be talking about mental health. Kind of all the things. I don't know. We'll see where we go with it, but could be a little bit of a heavy topic for us, but I don't know. Start us off, babe.
Well, let's first talk about why mental health is just so important. As everyone, if you saw our last episode, obviously we're a Black law enforcement family, and in the law enforcement profession, mental health is very important. So I know for me, as a police officer, you can hear a lot of things that are horrific. It's very trauma-inducing. You really see the worst in society. No one calls the police when they're having a good day. They only call the police when they need help or something has gone wrong or there's an issue or a problem and they can't solve it on their own. So they're calling the police to get help. So as an officer, you're responding to these multiple incidents of trauma every day for years and years. You're responding to car accidents. You're responding to shootings. You're responding to robberies. You're responding to SA events. You're responding to crimes against children. And you see a lot of stuff that for the average person, average American, see that stuff. They don't know that stuff. They just hear about a story on the news and that's all they know. They didn't put no pictures and you didn't hear the sounds or the screams or the cries on the news. You just heard a quick story from the newscaster and that was it. So I think it's highly important because you keep all of those incidents with you, and even though you try to push them out of your mind or you kind of forget about them, they're always there. And you just never know when they're going to pop up or when they're going to have an effect on you. You could see something very horrific and it not have any effect on you. And then maybe a year or two later, you see something else and it kind of triggers that emotion from you saw previous and you're crying and you have no idea why you're crying, but it's because of something that happened to you previously. So it's highly important and it's something that's not talked about enough. I think there's a kind of a stigma when it comes to mental health, especially in law enforcement. You don't want to be seen as weak because if you can't handle your business or your job and you need to seek mental health, then obviously that means you're weak and maybe this profession isn't for you. But that's just completely ignoring the fact that as a police officer, you're human. You have emotions, you have feelings just like everybody else, but sometimes you're not able to express them. So it can be very difficult. How about from a dispatcher's point of view?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it was a lot of the same. I think one of the biggest things when in my 911 dispatcher days is, unlike you guys on the street, we never got to see an incident through. So someone would call, they would be in complete panic, and they would have whatever incident was unfolding. But the reality is, once we hung up the phone or once we dispatch an officer, then it was on to the next.
Right.
And so it's the same. It's just like you said, no one calls. It's just screaming constantly. And all of those things. And so I just feel like, yeah, I mean, I think it's super important. I think it was probably more, actually, I take that back. I was going to say maybe it was more received to get any sort of help, counseling, therapy, whatever that trauma counseling, whatever it is, when you're a dispatcher, because we didn't have the stigma the same way that you guys, you know what I mean? Like it wasn't, we weren't judged under the same
Right.
light that you were, for sure. So, but yeah, I mean, I think in general, like we just with everything that we have going on in our world, in our country, I think mental health is a bigger topic that needs to be addressed. And instead of us addressing it ever, it's just pushed to the back burner. And that's why we, in my opinion, this is why we have a lot of the issues that we have today. I think about veterans. You were in the military before you even became a police officer, and
Right.
then the trauma and all the all of the traumatic things that you were exposed to. Then I know you can't talk about them, but you know we know that they exist, right? And so I think it's hard. And then I think about all of our vets who were deployed and had to deal with the trauma of doing their job, you know what I mean, in the military, and then now have to come back into the real world. And I don't want to say real world, but come back into the world. And then they're
Yeah.
expected to function like
And
nothing happened. And
yes.
it's like, it's not normal. And I think
Mm.
it's easy for all of us who have never been maybe through a traumatic experience, never worked in law enforcement, never was in the military, never was a first responder, because definitely other industries and jobs, careers are exposed to trauma as well. And so it's easy to Monday morning quarterback, you know, the moves of everyone else when you've never been in that situation, right? So it's easy to be like, oh, well, he should be this, and oh, he should be this, or she this, but you, okay, you sit in your cubicle, no offense, all day, every day. So how do you even have an opinion on this? But I definitely think that we need to do a better job of, I always, this is where I talk about very openly about, I have panic disorder. I suffer from depression. I go into depressive states all of the time. I have suffered with suicidal thoughts, and it's common. It's not abnormal, but in society, we don't talk about those because we don't want to be green sheeted, 5150 or anything like that, put on a 72-hour hold, stuck taking medicine for the rest of your life. But the reality is, everyone, a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people deal with those same things. And so, if we can, again, just start to normalize stuff like this, then it would be easier to have these conversations.
Yeah. And I think it starts with just erasing the stigma. I think, like I kind of alluded to earlier, it's just not frowned upon. It's you're being shown as weak, and you don't want to do that. However, I feel like mental health needs to be just as important as your physical health.
Yeah. Your dental,
Like,
your
yes,
everything. You go to the dentist, you go to the doctor,
yeah, absolutely.
you go get a massage,
Yes,
you go to the spa.
yes. Your brain, you need to work on your mental health, your emotional stability. That needs to be just as important as you getting a checkup from just going to your regular doctor. For those who don't know, I retired from the police department on off of stress and PTSD because, to be frank, my job was stressful, and I've seen multiple just really horrific. I've seen some things that a lot of officers haven't even seen, and I've had to do things that a lot of officers haven't had to do, and it was just getting to the point where it was just unbearable, and it was not only was it affecting me at work, but it was affecting me at home.
Yeah, you were a different person
Yeah, so it
for
just
sure.
it was I was in a bad headspace, and it just wasn't a very productive and safe environment for me anymore. So it was a tough decision, but it was time for me to go. So
But it also wasn't
yeah,
easy either. And I
no, it
think,
wasn't. Yeah,
like, and I think we talked about this on a previous episode, but like, you didn't even necessarily realize, I think, the extent of how bad your PTSD was. Or I think me just growing up in a law enforcement family, I'm no stranger to this life, but like now being married to a cop and then having kids and then see you come home from work and being a completely different person. And like to be frank, like someone I did not want to be around. Like it was rough. It was rough. But, you know I would always push you and say, listen, you need to go get help. You need to do this. And you were always like, no, because eventually I want to do motors and I want to do this and I want to work in this. And if I do that, they're not going to ever let me on a bike, which is sad. You know what I mean? It's sad that you have to put your mental health, any part of your health to the side so that you can achieve some of your goals, which is so many people do that in general, I think.
Yeah. And a lot of officers, they do not seek the mental health that they need. And what's the result of that? I hate to say it, but it is suicide. It is excessive force. It's a lot of bad things that probably could have been prevented if they have gone and seek some mental health.
It's true too. Like, I mean, I would go as far even to say infidelity as well. I think that law enforcement has it's a stereotype, I feel like, more than anything, that police officers cheat. Police officers are not faithful. Like, people tell me, oh, you better be careful, XYZ. And I'm like, I'm not worried about that because I trust my spouse and he hasn't given me any reason to believe that he's cheating on me. But I think what happens is, if you are someone who's mentally checked out, it doesn't mean that you're checked out of your marriage. It's just that you're checked out, right? And so I can see how easy it is so I created this organization called United by Blue in California, and it was for spouses of law enforcement officers. And it was, at the time, something that I felt was needed because police officers, they have like the police association, even though with these associations, they don't really get the support, in my opinion, that they should. But, you always just think when something happens, like the officer is good, but then like, what about the families? What about the wives? What about the spouses? What about the kids? And it is just as stressful or very stressful being the spouse of a law enforcement officer. So I created this organization called United by Blue. And a lot of the times when I would like talk to spouses, they would say like, oh my gosh, he doesn't come home. He doesn't tell me about work. Everything's so secretive. And he's so checked out. Was he cheating on me? I read in all these police wives groups that they're big cheaters and they're this. And I'm like, they're human. They're regular, everyday people. Do men cheat? Yes. Do women cheat? Yes. Just because he's a police officer does not mean that he's going to cheat. But my point to all of this is I think it's important that, because we have to understand, because they are human, right? When you deal with trauma, you hit a wall. And so when you leave, you're driving home from work, I would imagine that you just want to check out. You know what I mean? You don't want to think about, oh my God, when I get home, my wife's going to be there, my kids, now I'm going to have to switch into daddy mode. I think depending on your day and the type of calls that you ran to all day, you're like, fuck, I just need to relax. I just need to disconnect. And so I think what happens is a lot of these police spouses would see their husbands or wives coming home being completely disconnected from everything, and then would turn that into, oh, there must be an issue with me. Oh, you know what I mean? Oh, he's disconnected. Oh, there must be someone else. Oh my goodness, let me go through his phone because there's XYZ. And then before you know it, it spirals into, like, no, I just needed to come home and sit. Or I just needed to come home without you asking me 5 million questions of my day and having me relive those traumatic experiences. Am I wrong here?
No, that's right. Mark, you're physically exhausted, but you're also mentally exhausted because the whole day you've been on like high alert.
Yeah.
High alert, not paranoia, but you have your guard up because obviously I am a target. I'm a police officer in a uniform and driving around in a police car. So I am a target. So you have your guard up and you've been dealing with other people's problems all day, their trauma, trying to help them resolve their trauma, making decisions all day, making decisions for people. And sometimes when you make a decision for someone, they don't like it. So you have to make them do what you want them to do. So you go through that for your 10-hour or 12-hour shift, and then you come home and it's just like, I just want to veg out. Like, I don't want to make you decide what we're eating. I don't want to decide no more. I've been making decisions all day. I don't want to make any more decisions. I don't want to have to think. I don't want to think about or talk about anything stressful right now because that's what I've been doing for the last 12 hours.
But I think then the hard part with that is depending on, for me, I was always self employed, had the kids at home, and that's so stressful because I'm trying to work my business, take care of a little one, have one at school, and I need a break. You know what I mean? So it's
Don't
like
we all?
you walk home and you'd be completely checked out, and I could tell. But then it's like, I need a break too. You know what I mean? Like, and for people, especially like stay at home moms, I think there's this stigma there. You know what I mean? Like, if you're a stay at home mom, you sit around, you do nothing all day, and life is so easy and all of those things. And the reality, it's not. Like,
That's a
we need
full-time
to,
job.
it's a
Talking
full time
about,
job, but
yeah.
we need to check on those moms too and their mental health, because it's a lot when you have kids that are
Yeah.
going through all of the different stages of life, from infancy to, I mean, Savannah was, woo. Savannah, when she turned 15 months, Terrible 2 started. 15 months. So then I went through a lot of those stages by myself with no help because you were at work. And then when you would get home from work, you would just be mentally checked out. And so and I say this with this disclaimer here because I do not condone child abuse or anything. So I just don't want this to come out wrong. But I used to always say, and I will say to this extent now, like, I understand how moms or dads even who have limited support can do things like shake their kids to death, right? Like, you see that on the news and you're like, how in the world can that happen? But the reality is, when we talk about mental health, a lot of the time these people are just snapping. And it's because, and so I'm not saying it's okay. I mean, you definitely need to get the help and support and everything that you need. But I understand how people in certain situations can snap and it get to that point. My point is, being at home with the kids is tough. Being at home with the kids, whether that is your only job, whether you work from home, but you're still the in-home child care provider, whether you're self-employed, it's tough. And so I think that we had a lot of issues during that time when you kind of were going through your own issues, but me also trying to stay afloat with running my business. And I had my boutique. It was super busy. I was going live every single night, giving 10 to 12 hours to my business a day, but then also dealing with 2 kids. It was rough. It was rough. But, I think we just got through it. And I think my mental health even really suffered during that time as well. I mean, there was times I felt bad that you would come home from work or you would be on your days off and I'd be in full breakdown mode, panic attack. That would, next thing I'm over here like, I'm just done. I don't want to live anymore. And I know you're like, damn, Erin, like, I dealt with this at work all day. But that's just real life. It's just hard when you have so much. And I think once you become a parent, it gets harder because it's not you just caring for yourself, right? Like you said, you come home and then you still have to be a dad. Like, God, it's like I can't be selfish and do something to myself because I have these tiny humans.
You can never turn it off. You have
But
to
yeah,
always be on.
but I think that this is the importance of, like, this is just everyday life. And you could be listening and you're like, oh my God, this is so me. But if you haven't got counseling, get counseling. Who cares anymore about the stigma? Who cares what society says? If society calls you weak, let them call you weak. I'd rather be weak and in therapy than, you know what I mean, dead.
Yeah.
I'd
Definitely.
rather, it is what it is. But I just think it's so important. I think even to this day, I think it's important to find things to alleviate your stress. I think that stress, when they say stress kills you, stress really does kill you. It really does
Yes.
kill you.
In more than one way.
Yeah.
That's,
So it doesn't only affect you physically, it definitely leads to a lot of physical health issues, but emotional health issues as well.
and it can lead to addictions too. That's why alcoholism is so relevant in the law enforcement family. So many police officers are alcoholics because that's what they use to cope with all of the things that they see and that they endure on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I could always tell when you were stressed or
No.
when I needed to pay a little bit more attention because you're not a big drinker. But then when I'd be like, because there's 3 Corona bottles on the nightstand, and he just got home from work. I'm a little concerned. But I would just say too, like, don't ignore signs like that, whether it be for you, whether it be for your spouse, whether it be for a friend. I think that's like one of the number one ways, I guess, to tell if they're drinking a lot, if they're quiet and reserved, and they're not usually quiet and reserved. Like, I'm super extroverted. You're more introverted to most people. Most people look at us and say, oh, Aaron is the social one, Casey's way more reserved, which I think is our dynamic. But if I'm quiet, that usually means something's wrong.
Yeah, I would say just any behavior that isn't that person's normal
Right.
behavior doesn't necessarily mean that there's something wrong, but maybe it's just something you want to just pay attention to, or just look a little bit longer just to make sure that person's okay, because you don't want to miss signs and then wait till something tragic happens, and then you have that regret of, man, I wish I would have noticed this. Is there something I could have done beforehand that could have helped the situation before it became something horrific?
I think life naturally, as we talk about all of our struggles, I'm sure you all have your struggles too, and you might be like, dang, this sounds just like me. You don't have to work in law enforcement in order for you to deal with trauma. I mean, you could have your past traumas, your childhood traumas. I always say that when I see people hurting these days, and when they're an adult, I'm like, that's just unresolved childhood trauma.
Yeah.
Because we don't get help for all of those things. And it doesn't mean like I have unresolved childhood trauma. Now, that doesn't mean that I didn't have a great upbringing. I just have a lot of things that I am the middle child, and my siblings will always be like, oh, you would always say this. Or my mom and my dad would always say, oh, you would always say that we would treat you differently, and we were not treating you differently, and things like that. But the reality is, it doesn't matter what you think that you're doing. And this is for anyone. It's how things are perceived, right? And so I always felt like I was treated differently. And so I have a lot of unresolved childhood trauma that I'm still to this day dealing with through therapy. I am not someone who will sit here and say, do not take care of your mental health, or I did all of this healing by myself. No, I have been in therapy for years, and I think that it's so important, and do more than just therapy, right? Like, definitely do more than just therapy. But I feel like even in your relationships, in your marriages, people, when we've talked about this before, they're so quick to just give up and just immediately get to divorce, or like all of these different things, because they don't want to go to therapy. They don't want to go to counseling. They don't want to do the work. And the reality is, you have to do the work. Over every part of your life, you have to do the work. And so I know people all the time are like, how did you get Casey to go to therapy? I'm like, well, one, marital counseling, all of that is a lot different, right? Like, I think that just comes from, we want our marriage to work, so we just put in the work. If that means that we have to go to counseling, we go to counseling for our marital issues. But I think that therapy for your mental health issues are a little bit different. I'm sure people wonder, like, what led you to decide ultimately like that you needed to go and see a therapist for your mental health?
I didn't feel like myself. And I saw that my behavior was affecting people around me and their perception of me. So that's all it really took for me. I was never one to go to therapy, but I mean, I'm currently in therapy. I still actively see a therapist, and I've been in therapy for like the last, 3, 4 years now. I've been seeing a therapist. I mean, all through my retirement process, and even still now, even though I'm retired, I still see a therapist. So it's helped me. It's helped me to learn how to deal with some of my stress. Um, and it's also helped me to let me know that I'm not alone. I think a lot of times people think that it's just me. It's not just you. There are a lot of people who need therapy. There are a lot of people who go to therapy, and you're not alone.
So I think that we could talk about mental health through episodes, and who knows, we may get there, but this is just a little snippet to give you guys some insight on this is something that we both have struggled with. And if this is you, if you're listening and you're like, oh my goodness, like I know I need to reach out for help, but I'm just too scared to reach out for help, or I'm embarrassed, or I just don't know where to go. One, I just want to invite you guys to reach out to us. You're more than welcome. We can really support you through your journey, and just give you some of the resources that we have, and just even tips. Maybe it's you're to the point where you're like, I don't need that help yet, but I don't know how to handle my stress, right? And I think that's the thing. Uncontrollable stress leads to mental health issues, to physical health issues, to emotional health issues. It leads to all of those things. So, I mean, I think the moral of all of this is take care of your stress levels, be in tune with your body, be in tune with your spouse and your friends and everything like that. If something seems off, I always say something is probably off for sure. But yeah, I mean, if you guys need any resources or just want to even have this discussion further than what we've shared here today, then definitely feel free to reach out to us. If you are, I get the questions all the time, like, how in the world did you get your KC to the point where he has sought therapy? Because my husband needs this too. Reach out to me. I would love to try and sit with you and figure out like how we can make that happen. And one of the nice things is, and I'll say this, is it's been great to like see you like embrace your journey, right? Because again, as women, like we're emotional human beings. So we talk about all of these things. We cry, we do all of these things. But you as a man, it's not as common to sit here and say, yes, I struggle with my mental health. I sought therapy and XYZ. I think we need more men having these conversations as well, because I think this will save lives. This will decrease suicide in law enforcement, in military, and just everyday people. This will decrease it, right? Like, but we have to have the people who are going through these tough situations to be open. And until we get to that point, you know what I mean? We will continue to have, unfortunately, all of the things that come with the result of undiagnosed mental health issues and people not getting help.
I think to kind of piggyback on what you're saying, I just think it starts with, especially when it comes to men, just we as a society have to give men the space to be vulnerable, to be emotional, to express themselves, because to be honest, men aren't really given that leeway the same way that women are. And they're really taught, even from a young age, we're taught to suppress our emotions. We're taught to suppress our feelings. So that's why men aren't as open about things like this as women are, because we've been groomed since we've been a kid. I mean, how many little boys have heard, suck it up? Or how many men have heard, man up? So no one says to a woman, suck it up, or woman up. Like, that's not even a saying for women. So we have to
say other things.
We have to eliminate that.
You say other things like, why are you wearing that? Suck it up. Suck your stomach in. I try to make you laugh.
Well, we're talking about mental health. We're trying to get serious.
But that affects women and their mental health too. But I agree with you. But I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of double standards, and I do agree that there are a lot of that we do live in this society where society says that men are not allowed to have emotions, which I think is completely BS. I'm glad that you have emotions, I will say.
Yeah.
But I just also wanted to point out that, yes, y'all don't tell us to woman up and stuff, but y'all be telling us, no, you should not have worn that today. And that could affect my mental health. Because what happened to body positivity? Okay, that's a whole new episode.
Okay.
He's like, what?
All right, well.
Thanks for listening.
Yes, thanks for listening. We appreciate you guys. Please like, share, rate, and subscribe. Everything matters, so it does not go unnoticed. We truly appreciate it. So we'll see you next time.